Welcome to JavaScript Certified course. In this course, we will start with the basic level. You will learn the programming language JavaScript which make web pages alive, and we will go mostly in practical. I am not going to dive in theory of JavaScript because you can read that anywhere. We will start directly, we will install our environment and install the required extensions and start programming with JavaScript. My name is Fadi Noor and I am going to teach you JavaScript and how to develop with it. I have taught thousands of students in offline and online courses. So for that, let's get started with the JavaScript. I will start with a very simple presentation that I will explain what is JavaScript, and we will see real-world example how JavaScript is making the websites alive. So this course is created to be certified developer. So at the end of this course, you will have the basic level as a certified developer to be starting as a junior in any company. So if you know already HTML and CSS, you are ready to start with JavaScript. So as we will see here that we are going to learn a JavaScript which makes the web pages alive. So in other words, JavaScript is a programming language, and you can write programs with this language. But those programs called as scripts. They are not called as programs as we know like in Java or in C# or in any other programming language. We are writing here scripts. So you have to learn this word. So when I tell you, okay, write for me a script, it means you can write some small program with JavaScript. And also this program that they can be written directly on the web page's HTML and run automatically when you load the page. So when you open any web page, you will see like some view in front of you, which is HTML and CSS, and you will see some movement or animation, or for example, registration for a form, registration to log in. So this means that this JavaScript is handling all of these operations, which can be done and interact with the page between the user and the server. So in that way, you don't need a special preparation for compilation to run the application or to run a JavaScript application. So for that, let's see some live examples. I have prepared some live examples, for example, this one. So here we have some library which is called Splide. This is a JavaScript library which is doing like a slides. So in that way, as you see here, if I have only HTML and CSS and click around, click on these arrows, I will not have any interaction. But when I add JavaScript code to these pages or to these elements in the HTML and CSS, I have this animation. So I have a slider where I can display some information to the users like any website. So this is one of the examples of JavaScript. And also, if you see here that we can build images galleries. So when the user comes and click somewhere, he can see an image or a bigger image of what he clicked. So the user is interacting with the page, and this interaction comes from the JavaScript. So JavaScript is literally responsible for the interaction between the user and the page. Also, when I want to post a form, email, password, address, and all of this interaction, I want to put this data and click on sign in. On this clicking, what is going to happen? I am going to send my data to the server, and those data will be stored somewhere, so I cannot get lost in this, for example, form or on this shop. So in that case, all of this interaction from the user, which is going to happen on the web page, is managed by JavaScript. Simply, this is JavaScript. So you don't have to fill your brain with a lot of ideas and a lot of introductions. Let's take this introduction as a basic for our course, and we will continue step by step to learn how to make programs interacting with the HTML and CSS of the web pages. JavaScript today is not only used for developing a websites or making interaction with the user and the web pages. No, it's used mostly for everything. I am saying that literally, like everything, because, for example, you can build a server application and also mobile application, as we will see later. But what is making this language is very unique nowadays. it has full integration with HTML and CSS. So you don't have to care like, okay, I need to install some extras to integrate with HTML and CSS. No, JavaScript directly works with HTML, CSS with many functions and many commands that you can change in the structure of the HTML and CSS. Also, simple things are done simply. What this mean? This means that JavaScript has some already defined methods where it makes your life easy. So you can create arrays, create objects. Of course, you don't know what I am talking about, but all of this information are covered in that language. So it makes your life easy to create simple things with that simple language. And the most important part that all browsers like FileZilla, Google Chrome, and also Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge, all of them agree together to adapt this language to run on the web pages. So all the browsers is supporting or are supporting this language, and they are enabling JavaScript by default. So in that way, JavaScript is the only browser technology that combines these three things. So for that, JavaScript as well also allows to create servers, to create mobile application and web application. So for example, there are some frameworks which are written or they support JavaScript language to do some different goals. For example, I can create a server application where I communicate to the database and grab data from the database and send them to the front end or to the web page where the user can see that data. So for that, normally we were doing using like some another server languages like PHP or .NET or another programming languages which are really specialized for the server. But here now with JavaScript, you can write JavaScript syntax and create a server application, which is great. And also you can even create mobile applications using JavaScript. So mobile application works on Apple and also on Android. So in that way, when you write also JavaScript, you will have application working on iOS and also on Android phone. And the technology or the framework which is built over JavaScript to do that is called React Native. And also, you can create single page web applications. For example, better having an installation for like we can say application you have to install it on every PC, you can create something called web application. And this web application that all customers or all users of that application, they can open it via browser and then work with it. This is called a web application. And a famous framework for that is called Angular. So as you see, all of this is written or you can write with JavaScript to get a specific target. So you see, JavaScript is now everything. It's doing everything for you nowadays. Server application using NodeJs, mobile application using React Native, and also web applications using Angular or React. And of course, I didn't mention all the frameworks here. I mentioned the most hype, we can say, frameworks for doing that with JavaScript. But of course, there are more and more frameworks. You can do them and use them. So to move to the next step with JavaScript, you can, after these courses of like the basic level and the advanced level, you can move then to a server, and then you can do or choose some web application framework or mobile application. So in that way, you will be a full stack developer with one programming language, which is called JavaScript. Writing a code or a programming language, you need an editor for it. Of course, you can use the simplest editor which you have in your operating system, such as a notepad or for example, even Word or even any editor you have installed in your operating system. But for JavaScript, there are some editors which make your life easy. So you can have some features which can speed up your coding and productivity. So for that, I can start with the simplest editor which you are going to use. For example, there is Notepad++. This Notepad++ is a very simple editor which helps you with highlighting like some keywords and also opening and closing ranges of functions and methods, as we will see later, and it helps you also to open multiple files in the same time in one window. Of course, Notepad++ working on Windows, there are another editors for Mac, we can use them as well. Another editor which is making your life even better and easier is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is an editor built by Microsoft, and they are using it to build or write multiple programming languages in that editor. So it supports not only JavaScript or HTML or CSS, but even it supports Python, it supports Dart, it supports Flutter, it supports a lot of languages based on the extensions which you install in that editor. As well, there are multiple other editors, for example, like Atom. Atom is also very great tool for editing or text editing or even writing a code in some programming language. There is also Sublime. This is also a tool or editor which can organize your file, add some commands. It will help you to create the files and the programs, and also it contains all the highlightings and the coloring of your code snippets. For this course, we are going to install Visual Studio Code. I'm going to put all the links of all of these editors with these lectures, and you can install what you want. But for this course, we are going to use Visual Studio Code because it has multiple features where we can install extra extensions which will make our productivity in coding better more. So when you want to install, you just click on download Visual Studio Code and it will download some zip file. And this zip file, you can open it. Of course, on Mac, it will be one single file, which is concluding the application itself. And on Windows, you will have also the installation for Windows and also for Linux. So for Windows, you will have an exe file, and this exe file, you can run the installation process like any program, and it will be installed on your machine. So after installation of Visual Studio Code, we are going to have this window. So this is Visual Studio Code. I have previous projects, I have them here in recent, and also I have like some opening for a file or opening a folder itself. We will see later how we will create the folder structure for a JavaScript project. So we are going to have like the coding in that editor. So for now, if you get this window, you are ready then to start developing with JavaScript. Okay, let's do directly some practical work. I am going to open a folder. So if you have experience with Visual Studio Code already, because I assume that you learned HTML and CSS, so I am sure you used before an editor which is called Visual Studio Code. But if you don't use it, I talked about it previously, and we have now this window. I will click on open. So I will open not a file but a folder. So this folder will hold for me the structure of the project of JavaScript. So I will click on open and I will go to my desktop. I have here created a folder which is called JavaScript course, and in this folder we are going to place our JavaScript project or JavaScript files. So I click on open and it open for me a window. So here you have some notification about do you trust the authors of these files inside this folder. You just have to say yes, I trust. So now we have empty folder, but we are able now to create files inside that folder. So how we can create a file? So you can click either on this icon or you can say directly a new file here. But for example, I prefer for you to close this get started and work always with this File Explorer. This is called File Explorer here. So you can always work with your project files directly in the editor. So for that, I am going to create a file. I will call this file index.html. its HTML file. It will hold for us the HTML code for our web page, because as I told you, we have a web page which is contain HTML and CSS, and we are going to control this page and make it alive using JavaScript. So first of all, we need to have an HTML file. Okay, this HTML file is empty. You can create an HTML code base or the boilerplate of the HTML by typing in HTML or in the editor HTML:5. So when you put that, then it will generate for you all the boilerplate structure for an HTML page in the editor. This is one of the nice features which is built in inside Visual Studio Code. So for that, I'm sure you know already about this code, about this HTML, because HTML is another language is built to build the look and feel or the UI of the web page or the user interface of the web page. So let's see how this page looks like in the browser. So first of all, I will right click on this file and I will say relieve or reveal in Finder. This you will find it in Mac system or iOS system, but on Windows you will say reveal in Explorer. So when I click on this reveal in Finder, I will have, or it will open for me, the normal Finder or the window where the file is located. So we just double click on this file and it will open with Chrome. But if it's not working, then you can select open with. And with open with, you can select the application which will open this file. Normally is a Google Chrome. So you need for that a Google Chrome browser, which you can install as well from like a browser. So any browser, so you can have that directly and you can work with JavaScript. I advise you to use like Google Chrome because it has a great developer tools. So we are going to debug and compile or read or see the errors of JavaScript when we make a mistake inside the Google Chrome developer tools. I will talk about all of this later. So first, I open the page. So as you see here, we have it now opened, but it's empty. So let's put something in the body. So here I will say like H1, and inside this H1, I will put JavaScript page. So we can say here like JavaScript page, and I go back to my document, I will refresh, and then I will have here JavaScript page. So here I am refreshing. I'm going to show you here. I refresh. So I have JavaScript page. And for using the developer tools, which I told you, you can click on those three dots and then you will have something more tools. And with this more tools, you will see something called developer tools. You have another way to open the developer tools. You can press F12 on your keyboard, or you can as well right click on this page or this text and right or click on inspect. So when you click on inspect, you will have here the developer tools. So the developer tools is actually an inspector, how we have the code of our HTML, and I'm sure you know that previously. So now we are going to work with the source and also the console. The console here is going to output for us the JavaScript results inside this console. So in the dev tools, you will see something which is called a console. And this console is going to hold for you all the information which is outputs from JavaScript. So when you want to print something or you want to interact with something, like for example, when I want to click on this text, I want to see some text here or output, it's like a debugging tool. So you debug your code and see what is the output of the JavaScript code, as we will see later. So for that, at the beginning, we open something like this, and then we move to our Visual Studio Code back, and inside the head tag, we are going to add the script. So the script, as I told you, it's a program of JavaScript. As I told you, all the programs which are written with JavaScript, they are called a script. For that, we have to open a new tag, which is called a script, and inside this tag, we can locate a JavaScript code. One of the JavaScript codes, which is very famous, it's called console.log. So in that way, the console, it will log for me some data or some text inside the console, which is located in the DevTools as I showed you before. So here, when I write something in the console log and refresh my page, I will see here the result of that or execution of the JavaScript code which is written inside the script. So here I will have a console.log, and then I will put, for example, JavaScript project. And then we will save, and then we will go again to our DevTools and refresh the page, and we will see JavaScript project. And it's showing us where this console log come from which line in which file. So you see it comes from index.html on line 9, and the output is JavaScript project. So here we are. As I told you, we have HTML code, which is inside the body, and also we have a script. The script is a JavaScript or the life of the page, which is going to interact with this HTML to make some unique stuff which are interacting with the HTML using this small program which is called script in the language JavaScript. Console log is used to debug our application to see where we are having errors, where we are having mistakes, as we will see later, and we will develop step by step. It's always nice when we have a separated JavaScript code from our application or the HTML page. So for that, we can also cut out all of this code and put it in the separated file. So for that, you can create another file which is called, for example, also index.js, which is hold the JavaScript. It extension extension .js. So .js means that this is a JavaScript file. So the editor knows already that inside this file will be a JavaScript code. So for that, I will press enter. After creating this file, I will move this script or this line of code which I wrote with JavaScript to this file. So after saving that and saving this one, we are going to reload our page and reload the application. So when I refresh, I will see that I don't have anything in the console log. So in that way, I need to connect somehow this HTML page with that JavaScript file. So for that, you can remove this script, and then you can type script again, and with this editor you can see like a colon src, like a source. So when you press enter, you will have also like some attribute which is called source, like where is the source file for this script. So simply you just say that index.js is the file where I am having my JavaScript. So let's save and go again to the page and refresh. We will see JavaScript project. It seems that the file index.js in the line 1 has a JavaScript code. So index.js is our JavaScript code for this page. Of course, you can put as well inside folder. So here, when I create a folder, for example, I call this folder like a JS, and I move index.js inside that folder. So now JS is a folder contain index.js, and on the root I have index.html. So after that, we will see that the page cannot see that page. So we can have error here. So it says that get file index.js error, the file not found. So because I said here bring for me, which is on the same level of index.html, there is a file called index.js, but actually it's not on the same level of index.html. It's in a level of a folder inside JS, and then I have index.js. So in that way I can add that folder. So the folder is the same level of index.html on the root. So we have here JS and then slash and then index.js. So in that way the file or the HTML file will know that there is a JavaScript file inside the folder JS. So let's save again, go again to our browser, refresh the page. Nice, we have that file. And when you click on this index.js, you will see that the file is located in the JS file or JS folder, and then you will have index.html. We are going to work with all of this environment later. Now we care only about the console. The practical way of filing or defining the file structure in JavaScript is normally, or what developers are doing, is normally like we have a folder which is called assets. So in this assets, you can add your images or scripts or CSS files. So inside this assets, I'm going to put the JS folder, and then you can as well have another folder which is called CSS, and inside the CSS, you can put your styles. So for that, the index.js will be inside the JS folder, which is located inside the assets. So in that way, I had to add here another level, which is called assets, which is the folder which is over the JS. So if you notice that Visual Studio Code also give you a feature, when you type a folder and you put slash, it's automatically navigate or continue what is the next folder. So the next folder for me is JS. So when I put JS and I press enter, it's automatically added, and then it's give me the next suggestion, which is the files inside the JS folder, and the file is index.js. We have only this file. I will press enter and it will be added in my project or in my HTML page. So for that, we have a folder assets and index.html. So when we go again to the browser, refresh, and we will see that JavaScript project is in the console and our page is working fine. So in that way, we are ready to write a JavaScript code, and we can also create multiple files, as we will see later, of JavaScript. In this lecture, we are going to see how we can name the files of JavaScript. There are many naming conventions and many naming rules that we can follow to name our JavaScript files, especially in the case that the file consists of two words. Like for example, I will say index JavaScript or index something. I'm going to show you a slide where are the naming conventions which are the developers agreed together to follow to name JavaScript files. There are multiple naming conventions. First one is called Camel Case. Camel Case, as you see that we have the first letter of the first word is in the small letter, and then it has then the capital letter of the second word. So as you see here, two words and the second one has a capital letter. This is called Camel Case. There is another naming convention which is called Pascal Case, where the first letter of every word is capital. And there is as well a keep-up case. Keep-up case is separated between the words with dash, and all the words are written in small letters. There is as well snake case, which is combining all of those together, but with underscore separation between the words. So here we have a Pascal snake case. So as you see, capital letter of every word, but they are separated with underscore. And also there is here the, for example, keep-up snake case. So this keep-up snake case, it has instead of dash, we have here underscore. So in that way, you can name your files in that or on those name conventions. For me, I prefer in simple JavaScript projects to use the keep-up case for naming the files. So as you see here, when you go to our Visual Studio Code and we create JS file, I use always small letters and separate between the words with dash. The first statement of JavaScript which we saw is console.log. And this statement you can write as much as you want of those statements in your code. So for example, I am going to have here console log, JavaScript project. I can have those comments as much as I want. Those statements, they can be separated by semicolon as you see here. So in that way, I will have this console log 3 times when I refresh my page as you see here. But now you can as well as a code structure, you can put those statements near each other on the same line. But you must always have a semicolon. Otherwise, if it's on the same line, you will get an error because this will think that console.log has a rest of the comments, a rest of code, something like JavaScript cannot recognize. So we can say that the new line in JavaScript is equal to semicolon because this code, as you see here, will work fine without any problem. But when I remove the semicolon, then I will get error. So when I put all of them in the different line, then I will not have any issues as well. So for that, the statements normally in JavaScript, we separate them by line. And it would be always nice to have like the semicolon in our code, like I say that this statement finished. So now what if I do this? So I am going to have a new line here and then save my code and refresh. We will see the code is still working. This is because also that means that also the new line doesn't mean is ending of statement. So that's why JavaScript sometimes consider this is one statement or a one block. So that's why I told you it's always nice to use the semicolon to end the statement and we can have the code more readable. When we are going to build multiple blocks of code, we will know what is the meaning of this. Sometimes we will have a lot of operators inside some function. This I call it function, by the way. So this function is going to have multiple parameters. This is a parameter, by the way. So in that way, I am going to have multiple parameters and I want to put those parameters in multiple lines. This is what we will see in the future when we make some progress in the course. But for now, let's understand it like this. Each command, I am going to put it in a new line. So in this way, I will have a new line for every command. It doesn't matter how the semicolon has empty spaces between the command and the semicolon itself. Also, it doesn't matter how many lines there are between the comments. Also, there is no way or no problem how many tabs or spaces you have iteration or you have moved the text or the statement away from the previous statement. All of this will still work as long as we are not doing syntax mistakes. There are some tools which are doing the formatting of JavaScript for me. So for example, if I have multiple spaces here, when I save the file, it will remove those spaces and also it remove those tabs based on the needs or of the syntax of JavaScript. We will see that in the next lecture. As I told you, we installed Visual Studio Code because we are able to install some extensions or plugins which make our productivity better. To install extensions with Visual Studio Code, you just need to click on this icon here. Then, when you are connected to the internet, you will get list of suggested extensions. So the extensions which we need for our course are two. So first one is called Prettier. So this Prettier is going to format for us the code based on some configuration which we are doing. So if you remember, I told you if I put here multiple semicolons and I multiple tabs, it will format the code when I press on save, and then it will make it more beautiful and more aligned based on JavaScript syntax. So for that, let's install this Prettier. So this Prettier, it's called Prettier Code Formatter, and then you click on install, and then this is going to be installed on your machine. There are some instructions going with Prettier, so for that we need as well to do all of those configuration to make our code formatted in the right way. So let's close this window and go back to our file. As you see here, we made some changes and I need them to be formatted based on Prettier plugin. So when we go here to the file list, let's close everything, close the extension. I'm going to format this document. There are multiple ways to format that document. There is format on save, like for example, when I press on the menu, I will see here on the file list, I have save as, or when I save a file in general, then I will have it formatted, like when I press Ctrl S. Also, there is manual format, like when you don't have to save or format on save, then you need to configure that in Visual Studio Code, as I will show you later. So first of all, if you want to format this document, you need to press Ctrl, Shift, and P, like from print. So in this way you will get this command window. This command window has multiple commands you can execute. One of them is format document. When you don't find it, just type it and you will find the format document. When you press on this format document, then it will give you the ability to format that document using the default extension. The extension which we have installed is Prettier. So Prettier is going to format for me this document based on what we have configured in our Visual Studio Code. So when I click on format document, as you see, it's formatted based on JavaScript syntax. Also, there is ability to format on save. So when you press Ctrl S, like when you save the file, then it will be formatted automatically using the Prettier. If you are not able to do a formatting on Ctrl S or saving, then you have just go to the settings, and then in the settings here you have to select or search for something called format on save. So you need to be sure that this checkbox is enabled. If not, your file will not be formatted when you save it. So for that, we installed Prettier, and also we are enabling the save on or format on save, the command or the setting command in Visual Studio Code. So in that way, I will be able to format automatically my file when I have a right code and also like some mess in the syntax, like not errors, it's different. So when you have mess in the syntax but you don't have any errors in the JavaScript, then there is no problem, it will be formatted. But when you have a mistake, like for example, I am not going to close this one, so when I have here a format then, or a format mistake, then I am going to save, and as you see, it's saved, but it still have error and the file is not formatted. So for that, when you want the right formatting of the code, you must have all syntax and there are no errors in your code. So for now, this is the only extension which we need for our coding in the next levels. So after that, we are going to move to a programming flow and we will see how we can catch errors in the JavaScript, and we see what are the errors we have to read, what is the error, to analyze it or Google it or find a solution for the error. There are two ways to catch the syntax error in JavaScript. Syntax error, I mean when I do a mistake, like when there is some mistake in a function, or if I am missing like some brackets, or if I am missing some dots, as we will see later. This is called syntax error. And the syntax error can be shown in Visual Studio Code directly or in the console of Chrome DevTools. So let's do a mistake, for example, by removing one of those parentheses. So I'm going to remove this one. Okay, I got an error which is live and provided by VS Code, and it's saying that one parenthesis is expected. So it means that he expected some, like another one, the closing of this one, to be closed here before the semicolon. So this is a live, for example, live coding, but some errors cannot be detected. So how we can detect them? For example, I'm going to make a mistake here. So I say console.l instead of log. As you see that Visual Studio Code didn't complain totally. But where I can see the error then? When you run the application again or the web page again, you will see that you have the error in the console. So when I refresh the page, I will see that console.l is not a function. This means that console.l or this L is not a command, is not a statement, is not a function that can be called because it doesn't exist in JavaScript. So in this way, when I put it back and refresh, then the error is gone. Let's see more details. So when I put the error back and refresh, we will see that console L is not defined or not a function, and it shows you where is exactly this error. So it's on the line 3 of my code. So here I have a line 3 and it's here. So when you want to see more details, you can click on it and it will show you in the dev tools exactly the same code which is written here in the file and also the error itself. So the error is showing you that here is error mistake that console.l doesn't exist in JavaScript. So that's why I am detecting that error. As a beginners, we are enough with knowing the way of detecting those errors. We will see in the future like runtime error or compiling errors which are coming in more advanced levels. So for now, we detect JavaScript errors in that way in the console or in Visual Studio Code. Okay, because we were talking about errors in JavaScript, let's also have another type of error. I separated a lecture for that to be more focused. So most of developers, they have mistakes or typos when they are typing a code which is defined or predefined by JavaScript. So for example, this console is defined already. Some people, like as a case sensitive, they are trying to make, for example, this one, like the C console is in capital letter. So when you save this file, of course, VS Code didn't complain, and you run this code or refresh the page, you will get an error. This error says console is not defined. So there is a case sensitive in JavaScript. So console with capital letter doesn't exist in JavaScript. It exists only as a small letter. The same thing here. If I say log or log in capital letter and I save, then I will see that log is not a function. It doesn't exist. So in that way, we know that JavaScript is a case-sensitive language. So when you define a function or you have a function in some specific way, you cannot change on it. You have to follow exactly the same command syntax in like capital letter or small letters of the file to be able to run your project or run your web page based on the JavaScript commands. In programming in general, it's always to show the other developers my code, how it look like, so I need to explain it to them. There is also a way that you can explain some functions in your code or some lines of your code to the others by placing comments. So for example, let's have some console logs here with different statements. So I will say here that, for example, I will define log the login. Like here, the login or the user successfully logged in. So, and here I will say log the login error. So user wasn't able to have a login error. And here log the registration error. So in that case, I will say that, for example, I am assuming that I am doing these functions real. But now we are enough with the console log. So now I want to show to the other developers that this is logging the login. This is login the error. This is logging the registration error. So how I can explain somewhere in the code that this is explanation of my next comments or next statement. So that's why we come up with the comments. The comments in the code are the parts of the code which are not executable, like when the program syntax or when the program sequence goes, then it goes to those comments, but to the comments not. the comments are empty for it. So the compiler doesn't read any comment, doesn't complain about errors in the comment or everything. So in that way, you can define a comment somehow by // So I have a comment here and I will say, hey, here is the login. Also, I say here, for example, the login error. So I can also copy paste the comment, and also I say here the registration error. So in that case, we will have that comments for the developers so they know what is the next line is doing. So I am explaining to the other developers, explaining to my team. So when you refresh, you will not see all of those comments because they are not executed. So for example, if I go here and I put //, then this got green. So I am not able to see it in the console then, because JavaScript will consider it as a comment and it will not read it as a command. So when we save and go again, we will see that the first two console log executed, but the third one no, because it's not executed because it's a comment. There is also another way to comment multiple lines of code. So you can put here / and then asterisk, and then you will see that whole code got green or not executable. But when you want to close that comment in some line, then you have to put again the asterisk and then /. So the rest of the code which is going after is getting non-commented, and then it can be executable as a normal JavaScript. So in this way, you can get rid of all of this //. So // work only for one line, but it doesn't work for multiple lines. To make comments of multiple line, you have to put /*, and then you can close it again. So in that way, you define multiple line comments or one line comments in your code. Most of the time, a JavaScript application needs to work with information. Here are two examples. An online shop, the information might include goods being sold and a shopping cart. Or a chat application, the information might include users, messages, and much more. So in other words, variables are used to store the information of the user, which are going in the flow of the application of JavaScript or of the script itself. So let me give you an example. As you see here in this image, we see that a variable, we can consider it as a box. And this box has a name, and this name, for example, a message. And inside this box, we can put a value, like for example, hello. And also, after that, you can change that value based on your needs. For example, for this message, you can do whatever you want. You can print it, or you can do some calculation with it, or you can add it to some comparison, or you can, for example, present it on the HTML page. So instead using this value hello, I can use the box name where for example, I want to use it in some function or in some object. So now how we can translate this image to a code. So I will go to our JavaScript file. I am going to define a variable called message, and the value of it will be hello. So how we can do that? First, you can use the word or the keyword in JavaScript which is called let. So with let you can define a variable. So the box name is message. So you can say here that we define the box name, and with equal value or with the equal keyword, you can assign a value to that box. So when I want to assign a value which is now a string, we can say we need to have a double quotation or a single quotation. So normally in advanced JavaScript or in modern JavaScript, we use only single quotations to define the strings. So I will say here hello. So in that way, exactly how we implemented in the image. We have a box called message and inside it a string hello. Normally they define variables in different way. So they can say let message, and then later they say that message is equal to hello, as you see here. So in that way, I can also use this message variable different ways. So I can say here message hello, as much as I want. So now I want to use this variable. So how I can use it? So using this variable, for example, we can use it in the console log. So I can say console.log. Instead of adding this string, we can add the variable itself. So I will say here console log message. So after that, we put semicolon for every end of the line, and we save. Let's refresh our page, and we will see that we got here hello, and it comes with the index.js 15. So we have here on the line 15 the message or the box. I printed it in the console. So if I do this, like if I define the variable after the assigning of the string, then I will get error, because here the message is not defined yet. The JavaScript is going from up to down. So when it's going from up to down, it will see like there is a message here, but I am assigning a value. But what is message is something unknown. So first it will search for let message. So when we save and try again, I will get error, like I cannot access message before initialization. So we have to initialize the message first, and then I will get the value of it, assign the value to the message or to the box, and then I can do whatever I want with that box or with that variable. Also, we can change the variable value, like the box value. So as you see in this photo, I can throw the string hello as a value from the box and put another value, which is world. So in this way, the hello will go to the trash and world will come again to that box and it will be stored there. So how we can implement that? Simply, we can assign with equal again another string. So I will say here like message, and then instead putting like hello, I will put world. So in that way, the message will get this value at the end. So let's try to save and refresh, and we will see that we printed the world. Where is hello? Hello went to the trash after assigning the string word to the message. So in that way, the console log will see the last value assigned to the message variable. And why? Because JavaScript flow is going from up to down. So the latest assigned value to this box or to message variable is world. So that's why console log consoled or logged the world string in the console. There is another type of data storage or boxes in JavaScript which is called constants. Constants are different from variables that you cannot change the values of them after first initialization. So in that way, I cannot say hello first and then I do world. This will give me an error. So if we say that instead of this, we can say const to define a constant, then the message will take this value and you cannot again assign the world to it. We will get an error. Let's try that now. As you see here, first we have missing initializer in const declaration. So in that way, we cannot do it in this way. So we cannot say const message and go another line to assign the value. We have to do that directly. So I will go here and I will say const message, constant message is called hello. So we can put here as a string hello. And then we will see if we will get error here. So let's save that, try again. As you see, we got assignment to a constant variable. This is type error, so you cannot do that. So I cannot assign again to the message box a value which is world. Like I cannot change that value like we had in the variable or when we find the box with let. So when we comment out here or when we remove it, so let's do a comment out. So I commented, so this code will not be executed, and save, refresh again, and we will see that we got hello without any error. So the difference between let and constant, or variable and constant: variable, you can assign any value and the latest value of it will be able, or you will be able to work with it. But with the constant, you can initialize the value only one time, but you cannot change it during the JavaScript flow. So what about naming the variables? Here we used one word which is called message. So there are two limitations on variable names in JavaScript. First one, the name must contain only letter or digits or symbols like $ and underscore. So this is $ and this is underscore. So in that way, we have to define the variable with this only or those limitations. And the second rule, that the first letter or first character of the variable must not be a digit. So it must not be a number, because otherwise you will get error like that. So those are the rules of naming variables and constant in JavaScript. So I can say here, for example, message box. This is a variable, or you can define it like this way, message $box. You have a freedom totally if you are following the rules. Also, you can use numbers here, or in the middle you can use numbers. So there is no any problem in using numbers in the middle or at the end of the variable. But what about naming convention? Naming convention, normally, if you remember, we talked about Camel Case and Kebab Case and also the Pascal Case. So the common naming convention in JavaScript is Camel Case. So I will say here, instead of message box, I will not use like we can say here the underscore, which is called snake case. I will say message box like this. So the Camel Case, first letter small and first letter of the second word is capital. And of course, I want to mention that it's case sensitive. So message box like this is different from message box which is like this. So you cannot say those are the same, because there is case sensitive here and the letters are totally different. So those variables or those two constants are different. Also, there are some words which are reserved by JavaScript. So you cannot use any of that or those reserved words. For example, one of the reserved words, as we will see later, is called return. So you cannot use this word as a variable. Also, you cannot use class, or you cannot use as well function, as we will see later, because it's a reserved word. So we will see many words which are reserved in JavaScript which you cannot use as a naming of the variables. So for now, this is the Camel Case, and we can define the variables with some rules like no number at the beginning, and also only score and $sign can be used. A value of variable in JavaScript is always of center type. So for example, we can say this is a string because we are defining it as a string, or it can be a number, like for example, I have here 43. So then in this way that this constant will have a type as a number. There are 8 different basic data type in JavaScript. We will cover all of them in general in this course, but we will focus in like additional sections about numbers, for example, and about strings, the main important types. So for example, we have numbers. You can define a number in this way, or you can have a floating number. So all of them, they are defined as a numbers. We will talk about numbers more in detail. Also, we have strings. As you see here, we define a string. As well, we have booleans. Booleans which can be false or true. So in this way, we define the variable with those two keywords, false or true. So in that way, this constant or a variable will have a type which is called Boolean. As well, there is the undefined type and also the null type. We will talk all about them in the next sections in more detail. So here I can say that I have message box number, or we can say like const number. We can define a const number, and we can have a const boolean. We can say boolean like this, and we can have as well a const as a string. So here we can have const string, and I need to fix this to be like Camel Case. So we can have here like we can have it as a string. So we can have the three types here. So let's console log all of them. I will console log the number, I will console log the boolean, and I will console log as well the string. So we can have here console log, and we remove this, we put console or const string. So let's refresh the page. As you see, the string is always in DevTools as a white, but the number has this violet color. So you can distinguish between the number in that way, or if it's as a string. So here I am defining the number like a string. It's not a number. So if you refresh, you will see it as a white. So it's a string. So in that way you need to distinguish. So this is not a number, is a string, because we have those quotations. But in this way, it's a number. Also, there are types which are called objects. We will talk more about them in details, and we will see all operations about them. But for now, to not make it more complicated, we are enough with those three types: number, boolean, and string.